Farmhouse Fubao has space Chapter 1, Dead from Overwork. Chapter 1 Death from Overwork, Weird. Afternoon, in Tongjia village, Mr. Tong Yongji's home was surrounded by an aura of sadness. "And Nian, my daughter, please wake up. Don't sleep. Mom can't lose you." The sound of a woman crying came from a room, which was so heartbreaking to everyone's ears. The skinny little the bed moved her fingers lightly. She struggled to open her eyes. Her vision was blurry and she had a splitting headache. Memories that did not belong to her flooded into her head. It took her a while to adjust before she could clearly see the situation in front of her. She really traveled through time, died from overwork, traveled to this ancient time that she had never heard of, and became a 4-year-old female doll. The original owner's mother, Ning Qingqiu, lay in front of the bed, hugging herself and crying. There were several people surrounding her, and the light was a little dark. Tong and Ian could not see their expressions clearly, but she knew that these were relatives of the original owner and now her relatives. The original owner's name was Tong Anian, and she was the only female child in Mr. Tong's family for 3 generations. Although she was doted on by everyone in the family, she had been suffering from a weak disease since she was born. She had always been in poor health and had to take medicine every day. In fact, she could only spend most of the time in bed, and only occasionally could get out of bed to move around. This sudden illness occurred because someone deliberately tricked her into going to the river. Then, someone unknown pushed her into the river from behind. He was already weak, caught cold, choked on water, and had a high fever for several days, but the original owner could not survive it. When the body opened its eyes again, the soul had changed. However, the original owner was a 4-year-old child. Who could have such a deep hatred for her that he would push her into the river and drown her? "My daughter." Ning Qingqiu couldn't bear it any longer and burst into heart-wrenching tears. "Ahem, mother, don't cry." Tong and Ian gritted her teeth and spoke. Her voice was weak and as small as a mosquito or fly, but it was still heard by Ning Qingqiu, who cared about her daughter. "Nian Bao, are you talking?" Ning Qingqiu raised his head cautiously, thinking that he was hallucinating. "Mother." She yelled "Mother" with great effort, trying her best to smile. Nian Bao, woo, you're awake." Ning Qingqiu burst into tears and was out of breath. "Nian Bao, are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere else? Tell Grandma." Mrs. Tong sat on the edge of the bed, looking at Tong Enian's thin and sallow little face with distress. "Milk." Tong Anian looked up at her with her weak little face and what she thought was the sweetest smile. But no matter how sweet her smile was, she was still too weak. That weak look made Mrs. Tong feel heartbroken. This child has suffered since she was born. Letting her go might free her up, but how could they be willing to let her go? Tong and Ian looked at the people in the room who were greeting her, and her eyes stopped on the face of a woman in her 30s. This woman was the original owner's Aunt Zhao Cuifan. To say why I noticed her, it was because her expression was somewhat intriguing. Everyone else was happy and excited when they saw Tong and Ian waking up. Only her eyes were panicked and the smile on her face was a little stiff, as if she didn't expect Tong and Ian to wake up. In the last memory of the original owner, apart from the fear of being suddenly pushed into the river, the fear of water filling his mouth and nose, and the constant struggle in the water, the only thing that he remembered was the figure leaving in a hurry. That figure was extremely familiar. Moreover, the figure is somewhat similar to the so-called aunt in front of her. It is very likely that she was the one who pushed the original owner into the water. Perhaps sensing Tong Enian's gaze, Zhao Cuifan raised her head and looked over. Tong Enian's eyes were very clean, yet profound, looking at her unblinkingly, as if she could see through people at a glance. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. She was a little frightened. Could it be that Tong and Ian discovered what she had done? Mr. Tong, Tong Yongji, and Mrs. Tong, Lu Lanji. Dafang, Tong Zhengye, Zhao Cuifan. Second room, Tong Zhengjie, Xie Chuanxiang. 3 bedrooms, Tong Zhengyang, Ning Qingqiu. Fourth room, Tong Zhengping, Song Yu. The eldest child, Tong Anqi is 13 years old. Tong Anxiang is 30 years old. Tong An is 4 or 8 years old. Second child, Tong Anha is 21 years old. 3-bedroom children, Tong An Ian is 7 or 4 years old. 4-bedroom children, Tong An Kong is 5 or 5 years old. Tong Anil is 6 or 5 years old. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 2, Space System Startup. Chapter 2, Space System Startup. Probably not. She pushed Tong An into the river and left immediately. Tong An was just a child, and it was impossible to think that she had done it. Zhao Cuifan disliked Tong An very much. In order to treat this sick man, the family spent a lot of money. Not only did they borrow a lot of money, but they also borrowed a lot of money. She once said that she wanted everyone to give up on Tong An, but Lao Tong's family was unwilling and even scolded her. The whole family is pampering and protecting the sick boy. Even though there is no food left in the family, they are still trying to find ways to get food for the sick boy. It is clear that no matter how much he eats, he will not survive, yet he still wastes so much food. This made her very angry. She had given birth to 3 grandchildren for Lao Tong's family, but they were not as important as a girl who could not survive. That day, she saw Tong An leaving home, so she followed him for some reason. Seeing the girl standing alone by the river, she pushed her by some mistake. By the time she came to her senses, she had already run back home in a daze. As soon as she entered the house, she heard someone shouting that Tong An had fallen into the water. After being in a coma for several days, I originally thought that this sick girl would definitely die. Who would have thought that she would actually come back to life again? Zhao Cuifan put away her panic and looked at Tong An with what she thought was the kindest smile, hoping that Tong An wouldn't see anything. The corner of Tong An's mouth raised a sneer that was hard to detect, showing a guilty conscience. As the saying goes, it is never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. She is only 4 years old now and is still very ill. She needs to take good care of her for a while. If she wants to take revenge, she is not in a hurry now. If it was really Zhao Cuifan who pushed her into the river, then don't blame her for not caring about family ties. However, there was no family relationship between her and this Zhao Cuifan. The only family relationship she had was with the poor girl from the original owner, and she was already dead. Nian Bauer. You need to take good care of your body, you know. You are grandma's lifeblood. Mrs. Tong looked at Tong An kindly. Well, Nian Bauer, it's fine. The soft little milky voice hit the old lady Tong's heart softly. At that moment, the old lady felt so warm in her heart. Oh my little sweetheart. You can squeeze grandma's heart so tightly. Mrs. Tong hugged her in her arms. It felt so distressing. Okay. Go and see what's edible in the kitchen, and quickly give it to the 4th wife, so she can get Nian Bauer something that can nourish her body. Mr. Tong's words reminded Mrs. Tong. In a farmer's family, although the man is the head of the family, all household expenses are controlled by the mother-in-law. Yes, yes. I have forgotten about this. Let's go to the kitchen now. Mrs. Tong stood up in a hurry and sent everyone else in the room out. Well. Go quickly. The old man watched the old lady go out, and then turned to look at Tong An on the bed. Nian Bauer, you have a good rest. Grandpa will go see if your brothers have found any birds. The eggs will replenish your health. Tong An didn't know the original owner's background at this time, so she was eager to be alone in a room at this time. Okay. Thank you. Grandpa. Tong An smiled at Mr. Tong. Mr. Tong stood up, turned his back to Tong An and rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. Although he was very happy to hear Tong An calling her grandpa, he was also very distressed to see Tong An so weak. Everyone went out to let Tong An rest. There was no one in the room, so she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and at the same time, she could sort out the things in her mind. The space system is starting, please wait. Space system? Is this an auditory hallucination? The system has started successfully, and the identity is being confirmed. The identity has been confirmed successfully, Tong An, female, 4 years old. Check out the 16 to 9 book bar and see the correct version. The mechanical baby sound entered Tong Enyian's mind, making her stunned. By the time Tong Enyian reacted, she was already in a strange environment with no grass on it. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 3, Great Space Effect. Chapter 3 Space plays a big role. There was only a few square meters of empty space, with a dark color and nothing, except for a dry spring in the middle. This is space. What's the use of this empty space? Tong Enyian looked around and frowned. She has always been very receptive and has read a lot of novels. At least there will be some kind of divine spring in other people's spaces. Why is it so empty when it comes to her place? Master, space is very useful. You can plant any plants you are interested in the spiritual field, and you can also plant medicinal materials. When the experience value reaches the standard, the space can be upgraded. The spring is a spiritual spring. As the space upgrades and the spiritual spring is activated, spiritual spring water will gush out, which is good for the owner's body. The most important thing is to ask the owner to collect merit. With the merit, the owner can redeem what he needs in the system. The system said a few more words to give Tong Enyian a rough understanding of the function of the space system, and then sent Tong Enyian out of the space. To upgrade the space system, I'm afraid I need to buy more good things. This is not a problem. The place she is in is a mountain village, and there are many treasures in the mountains. After she regains her health, she can go up the mountain to look for her. But how can this merit come from? Is it to ask her to do good deeds every day? She doesn't think she is a good person. Nien Bauer, your brother touched a few eggs, your fourth aunt made you custard, and grandma fed you. Mrs. Tong sat up against the pillow with Tong Enyian in her arms. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, picked up the bowl, and spooned the egg custard to Tong Enyian's mouth. Tong Enyian sat there obediently and ate half of the bowl of custard. It's not that she doesn't feel sorry for her family, but that her body is too weak now and needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. It's delicious. Tong Enyian finished half the bowl of custard and felt warm all over, feeling much more comfortable than before. If it's delicious, eat more. Let your brother and the others continue to touch the eggs for you tomorrow. Mrs. Tong burst into tears looking at the weak Tong Enyian. This is the first time Tong Enyian has eaten so much. Grandma, don't cry. Tong Enyian's eyes were red, and she stretched out her skinny little hand to wipe away Mrs. Tong's tears. Okay, Grandma won't cry, and Grandma's little sweetie won't cry either. You just woke up. You need to have a good rest. Get some sleep quickly. Maybe you'll be fine tomorrow. After Mrs. Tong helped Tong Enyian lie down, she gave some instructions before leaving the room. In the next few days, Tong Enyian didn't think about anything, and quietly took care of her health at home. Her spirits were getting better day by day, and her speech was smoother than before. Hey, it's been a year of drought. I'm afraid there won't be enough food this year. Mr. Tong sat at the door and muttered sadly. No, most of the water in the river has gone down. Tong Jingye took over what Mr. Tong said. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It hasn't rained in a year. More and more people are digging wild vegetables. The mud is exposed on the mountainside. In 2 days, we may not be able to dig wild vegetables. Mrs. Tong is also very worried. It has not rained this year. They have to fetch water from the river to water the crops. The distance is far and the water is not enough. The crops are not growing well. In order to make ends meet, everyone dug wild vegetables. There was nothing left to dig near the foot of the mountain. But there are ferocious beasts in the mountains. They are just farmers, and no one dares to go deep into them easily. Check out the 16 to 9 book bar and see the correct version. Mom, otherwise, I'll take my brothers to the river to see if they can catch fish, right? My little sister also needs to recuperate now. Tong Anchi hesitated for a while and walked up to Mrs. Tong. There is less water in the river now, and there are more people going to catch fish in the river. I'm afraid there will be no fish in the river for a long time. Mrs. Tong shook her head directly, not wanting Tong Anchi and the others to waste their energy in vain. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 4, Save People, 1. Chapter 4 Rescue, 1. Mrs. Tong disagreed, and Tong Anchi didn't say anything further. Before Mrs. Tong could do anything else, she felt someone tugging at her clothes. Lowering her head, it was Tong Nian standing next to her, grabbing the corner of her clothes and tugging gently. "Dear little dear, what's wrong?" Mrs. Tong squatted in front of Tong Nian and looked at her little face. "Grandma, Nien Bauer, can you go to the river with eldest brother and the others? Nien Bauer also wants to see catching fish." Tong Nian spoke with some caution. "But your body." "Grandma, big brother, hold Nien Bauer, and go, Nien Bauer, stand on the shore and don't run around." Tong Nian looked at Mrs. Tong seriously. Mrs. Tong looked at the longing look in her eyes and couldn't help but agree. However, he still told Tong Anchi to protect Tong Nian along the way and not to make Tong Nian too tired and not let her go to the water. Tong Anchi responded and picked up Tong Nian. Tong Anshin and the others hurriedly picked up fish baskets and other fishing tools to follow. When we arrived at the river, there were already many children, big and small, swimming naked in and out of the river. Tong Anchi asked Tong Anshin and the others to stay on the bank to accompany Tong Nian. He took the two older ones with him. A little bit into the water. Tong Nian stood obediently beside Tong Anshin, holding his sleeves with her little hands and watching quietly. "System, check if there are any fish in the river." Tong Nian notified the system with her mind. "Yes, master, there are no fish nearby. There is a tortoise under the stone 100 meters away from you." The system's words made Tong Nian widen his eyes and look for the stone the system mentioned. The tortoise is more replenishing than the fish. However, there were too many stones, and she couldn't tell which ones they were. "Fourth brother, I saw, over there, under the stone, there was something swimming by." Tong Nian pulled Tong Anshin's sleeves and looked up at him. "What?" "I don't know, I didn't see clearly." Tong Nian can't be said to be a bastard, right? I can only shake my head. Tong Anshin ran directly down, and Tong Nian guided him there according to the location indicated by the system. He carefully moved the stone away and saw a big tortoise nesting underneath. He was startled at first and hurriedly reached out to catch the tortoise and hold it in his arms. "Brother, look what I caught." Tong Anshin looked at Tong Anchi and the others and shouted. Tong Anchi and the others were so happy when they saw what Tong Anshin had in his arms. "Master, someone fell into the water." Tong Nian was watching her brothers happily when the system spoke again. Tong Nian turned her head and looked over, and she could indeed see a figure floating up and down in the middle of the river, struggling less and less. Big brother, someone fell into the water." Tong Nian shouted, and others also noticed the figure in the middle of the river. Tong Anchi swam directly over without hesitation. When several other children with good water skills followed, Tong Anchi had already held him in his arms and started swimming to the shore. "It's Chuanchung's stone mother, your son drowned." Shirtu, wake up, what's wrong with you?" When Shitu's mother heard that her son had fallen into the water, she threw down half of the clothes she washed and rushed over. "This motionless one couldn't be drowned, right? Looking at his face turning purple, he must be in trouble. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version." "My son." Shirtu Nyang lay on Tong Shirtu and cried loudly. "System, can we still save him?" Seeing the child who was about the same age as herself, lying there lifeless, reminded Tong Nian of Ning Qingqiu, and she couldn't bear it. Hearing that the system said there was still hope for help, Tong Nian breathed a sigh of relief, carefully squeezed to the front, and took Tong Anchi's hand. She knew that you couldn't save a drowning person with his head upside down. If the child was wrapped up, he might not be able to save him even if he wanted to. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 5, Save People, 2. Chapter 5 Rescue, 2. Brother, he's not dead. He can be saved. If it's too late, it'll be too late. Tong Nian whispered softly, but no matter how quiet she was, many people heard her, and everyone looked at Tong Anian. Only then did they discover that Laodong's sick granddaughter had gone out. What do you, a sick little girl, know? She's already drowned, how can she be saved? That's right, if this can be saved, how many more people can still be drowned? If you really understand this, why don't you think of a way to cure your own illness first? It's really ridiculous. Tong Anian pretended not to hear these people's doubts at all, and just looked at Tong Anchi firmly. Tong Anchi actually felt that he could really be saved. However, what these people said was really too much. He was worried that Tong Anian would think too much. Seeing Tong Anian's expression that had not changed at all, Tong Anchi breathed a sigh of relief. Little sister, how to save me? Do you know? He held Tong Anian's hand tightly and looked at her firmly. Tong Anian couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Tong Anchi believed in her. Put him flat, clean, the sand in his mouth, nose, and then let him lie head down on your lap. Tong Anchi ignored the obstruction of others and squeezed with Tong Anian. Go in. Tong Anian stepped forward and used his fingers to dig out all the sand from the child's mouth. Then, Tong Anchi turned the child over and let him lie head down on his lap. What are you going to do? Give me back the stone, you sick man. You are almost dead, and you still want to torment my stone. When Stone Mother saw Tong Anchi snatching her son, she rushed over like crazy. Tong Anxiang and the others hurriedly stepped forward. Stop in front. Aunt Wang, my eldest brother and the others are trying to save Shirtu. Tong Anha said angrily. How can they save my stone? Get out of my way and return my son to me. Tong Anshin and the others looked at Shirtu Nyang's crazy look, and wanted to drag Tong Anian and the others away, but looking at Tong Anian's serious expression, they could only stop Shirtu Nyang from causing trouble. You kids, stop messing around. The stone is gone. Why are you still torturing him like this? Hurry up and put down the stone. And Chi, take your brothers and sisters home quickly and don't mess around here. Tong Anian didn't think he heard those words, raised his thin little hands, and began to push and slap the child's back. The onlookers pointed at Tong Anian, and no one believed that he was being raped. A drowned person can still be saved. Ahem, wow. After the child spit out a few mouthfuls of river water, he burst into tears. Live, really live. Oh my God, I'm really alive. I thought I was dead. Tong Anchi put the child on the ground. Seeing that the child's complexion had improved a little, he turned to look at the pale Tong Anian. His eyes were filled with excitement. His little sister had really saved the life. Tong Anian wiped the sweat from her face and took back her hand. Thank you, Shirtu, it's okay, mother is here. Shirtu's mother knelt on the ground excitedly, hugging Shirtu and thanked Tong Anian and the others. Tong Anian hurriedly avoided it, she had no interest in being kneeled down by others. Especially now that she's a child. Little sister, are you tired? Big brother will take you home. Tong Anchi looked at Tong Anian's tiredness and picked her up. Yeah. Tong Anian lay weakly on Tong Anchi's shoulder. She was really too tired and both wrists hurt. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. I didn't expect that this body, already so weak, would be so exhausted just by trying to save someone. Congratulations to the master for successfully rescuing people. You have gained 1,000 merit points. 1,000 merits are worth it. What can I exchange for it? Tong Anian didn't expect that just by saving a child, he would have 1,000 merits. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has Space Chapter 6, Space System 0. Chapter 6 Space System, 0. Master, the level of the space system is too low. Now it can only be exchanged for plant seeds and blueprints. Plant seeds. Tong Anian opened her eyes tiredly and looked at the withered wheat fields around her. Perhaps, she could. System, are there any sweet potato seeds? Return to the master, yes. If you plant it in a space, can it be moved outside? Can. Then exchange the sweet potato seeds and plant them directly in the space. I'll tell you the rest when I wake up. Also, your name will be Zero from now on. After saying that, Tong Anian closed her eyes in a deep voice. Thank you, Master, for the name. Space System Zero's voice gently passed through Tong Anian's mind. When they got home, Tong Anian had fallen asleep on Tong Anchi's shoulder. He put her on the bed, and the children told the adults at home that they had caught the and Tong Anian had rescued Tong Shirtu. Everyone was surprised that Tong Anian knew how to save people. However, Tong Anian had fallen asleep now, and they didn't ask anything. They just asked the children to go out to collect some firewood and dig some wild vegetables. Mom, tell me, why did Nian Bao suddenly know how to save people? Ning Qingqiu looked at his house with some worry, then turned to look at Mrs. Tong. I don't know either. When Nian Bao wakes up, let's ask her. No matter how you say it, rescuing people is a good thing and a good deed. Mrs. Tong was also at a loss. No one knew how Tong Anian knew how to save people. Human method. When Tong Anian woke up, it was already dark outside. Instead of going out, she ducked into the space first. The originally empty spiritual field was now full of green. Tong Anian squatted down and looked at the plants without reacting. Was this planted in the afternoon? Has it grown out now? Moreover, he has grown so big. Is it an illusion? Zero, what's going on? Back to the master, time in the space is faster than time outside, and the plants in the spiritual field grow faster. The sweet potatoes planted in the afternoon can be harvested early tomorrow morning. Ling knew what Tong Anian wanted to ask, so he directly explained it to Tong Anian, and Tong Anian understood. Looking at it this way, this spiritual field is a rare good thing. If she planted food in it, wouldn't it be ripe in one day? Master, someone is coming. Ling promptly reminded Tong Anian. Tong Anian came out of the space, and the door of the house opened at the right time. The person who walked in was her cheap father, Tong Xingyang. Daddy. The soft and waxy voice made Tong Xingyang's heart soften, and he walked to the bed in a few steps. Did our little lazy pig wake up? Let's go, Shidu's parents are here to thank you, and Grandma asked you to go out. Tong Xingyang directly picked up Tong Anian and walked out. In the yard, Tong Shidu's father, Tong Chunsheng, and Shidu's mother, together with Tong Shirtu, were talking to Mr. Tong and the others. In fact, what they said the most was thanks. Is Nian awake? Shirtu, come here and kowtow to Nian. She saved your life. From now on, you have to protect Nian, you know. When Tong Chunsheng saw Tong Anian being carried out, he pulled Tong Shirtu and was about to kneel down, which shocked Tong Anian. Chunsheng, what are you doing? Nian Bao is still young, how can you kneel down to her? Shirtu is weak, so don't torment him. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. Mr. Tong grabbed Tong Shirtu and prevented him from kneeling. Tong Chunsheng did not force him. He just looked at Shidu's mother, who raised a bamboo basket in front of everyone. Auntie, we don't have anything valuable at home. These are 2 old hens that are laying eggs. They can lay one every day. You can stay and help Nian recuperate. Don't dislike them. Mother Shirtu looked at Mrs. Tong and the others with some embarrassment. The harvest in the past 2 years was not good, and there was another year of drought. There was really nothing valuable at home, so she could only send 2 old hens that laid eggs. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 7, very serious question. Chapter 7, a very serious question. What are you doing? As a fellow villager, no matter who encounters this problem, won't they help? The stone is flooded and frightened. Take the chicken back and replenish the stone's body. Mrs. Tong knew that life was not easy for every family in the drought years, so how could she accept these 2 old hens? When Tong Chunsheng saw that Mrs. Tong did not intend to accept the old hen, he suddenly became anxious. He also knew that Tong Anian had saved the life of his family's only Miao Miao, so it was a bit hard to thank him with 2 old hens, but now his family only has this. I can take it out. Auntie, do you think this courtesy is too light? Don't worry, wait until I go to the town to find a job, earn some money, and buy more delicious food for Nyen. Tong Chunching stood up and spoke seriously. After hearing this, Mrs. Tong knew that Tong Chunching had misunderstood her. What kind of gift is light? Now, the harvest is not good, it is not easy for every household. I ask you to take the chicken back and replenish the body with the stone. Let's do this. I will make the decision for us, Nyen Bao. Where is this chicken? Keep it. Take one back with you, otherwise, don't keep even one. Mrs. Tong could tell that if she didn't keep the old hen, Tong Chun would definitely make them think too much, so she kept only one. Tong Chunching didn't want them, so Mrs. Tong asked them to take away all the old hens. They had no choice but to keep one. Nyen, it's because Auntie is a petty person. You saved Shirtu and I said that to you. Don't argue with Auntie. From now on, Auntie will treat you as her own daughter. When Shirtu Nyang thought about what she said when Tong and Nyen saved her son, she felt ashamed. The other child was saving her own son, but she said that his child was going to die. Although she felt embarrassed as an adult to apologize to a child, she knew that she was wrong, so she apologized to Tong Nyen seriously. Yes, Nyen, your aunt has such a temper and speaks without thinking. Don't be as knowledgeable as her. Tong Chunching naturally knew what Shirtu was talking about, so he also apologized. It's okay, uncle and aunt were worried about Shirtu. Nyen Bao doesn't mind, and Nyen Bao's health is much better. Tong Nyen smiled sweetly at them. To be honest, Shituru said Tong Nyen really didn't listen. At that time, she was just thinking about saving Tong Shirtu. Okay, Nyen is a good child. From now on, Auntie will never talk nonsense again. If someone says that Nyen is wrong, Auntie will fight him to the death. Mother Shirtu wiped her tears. Tong Shirtu might have been frightened. He has been nestled in Tong Chunching's arms, watching Tong and missed them without saying a word. However, no one would care so much about a child. Uncle, Auntie, let's go back first. If anything happens at home, just say hello. After chatting with Mr. Tong and the others for a while, Tong Chunching and the others saw that it was getting late, so they planned to go back. Okay, you guys go back quickly. Mrs. Tong asked Tong Junye to see them off. Then, she looked at Tong Nyen with a proud look on her face. The eyes of others naturally fell on Tong Nyen. Tong Nyen was really uncomfortable with being stared at by a group of people. She couldn't help it. The eyes of these people were so intense that she had a bad feeling. They were definitely going to ask her how she knew how to save people, right? How should she explain it? Our Nyen Bao is really good. We can actually save people just by going out to play. However, Nyen Bao, can you tell Grandma how you knew you could save the stone by doing this? Mrs. Tong took Tong Nyen from Tong Jingyang's arms and held her in her arms, feeling proud but also a little confused. Tong Nyen. Look, she knew she would ask this. This is a very serious question, how to answer it. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space chapter 8, not 3 years old. Chapter 8 not 3 years old. In my dream. Grandpa taught me. Tong Nyen lowered his head and hesitated for a while, then spoke softly. Mr. Tong and Mrs. Tong looked at each other, and hurriedly picked up Tong Nyen and returned to their own room. Nyen Bao, what did you just say? Mrs. Tong put her on the bed and asked carefully. In my dream, my grandpa taught me. Tong repeated what she just said. In fact, she didn't know how to explain these things. She couldn't tell them that Tong Nyen had changed her core. People in ancient times believed in strange powers and gods, so she used this excuse to stop their mouths. Nyen Bao, no one can say that they know about this in the future. Even if it is true, no one else can know it, do you know? Although they knew in their dreams that these things were impossible, Mr. Tong and the others did not dare to be careless. They could only warn Tong Nyen first, and Tong Nyen nodded with a smile. For dinner, they ate wild vegetable wo-wo and drank stewed tortoise soup. Tong Nyen stopped eating after half of the wild vegetable wo-wo. The tortoise soup was too tonic and not suitable for her now. The others all ate with their mouths full of oil and were very satisfied. Master, Grandma, we are going to dig wild vegetables. Tong Anshin was ready to go out with a small backpack on his back. This is the daily task of their little cubs. They can't do any work in the fields, so they can only dig wild vegetables. I want to go too. Tong Nian in the room heard Tong Anshin's words and ran out with short legs. Hey, slow down, don't be impatient. Mrs. Tong looked at Tong Nian who ran out, and was so frightened that she was afraid that she would fall. Tong Nian quickly stopped in front of Mrs. Tong and looked up at her. Grandma, I want to dig wild vegetables with, fourth brother. Nien Bauer, we won't go if we are not feeling well. We will have a good rest at home. Mrs. Tong is not willing to let Tong and Nien work hard. She has finally regained her energy in the past 2 days. If something happens again, wouldn't it kill her? His life? Grandma. I'm going. Tong Nian's eyes were extremely firm. If we don't go, what will happen to those sweet potatoes in space? She needed a way to get those sweet potatoes home. Then let her go. And Chi and you guys can go with her. Protect Nien Bao more on the way and don't let her bump into her. Tong Nian's health is better than before. Mr. Tong he didn't want to keep her trapped at home, so he felt more at ease with Tong Anchi and the others following him. Mr. Tong agreed. Although Mrs. Tong was worried, she didn't say much. I know, Grandpa, little sister, big brother will carry you away. Tong Anchi put the bamboo basket on his back and walked towards Tong Nian. Little sister, fourth brother will hug you. Tong Anshin was faster than Tong Anchi, and he stepped in front of Tong Nian in a few steps. Little sister, let the third brother hold you. Tong Anxiang bent down and looked at Tong Nian with a smile. Don't fight with me, little sister, the second brother is strong, the second brother will hold you. Tong Anha saw Tong Anchi and the others walking over, and he hurriedly followed. Little sister, please give me a hug, fifth brother. Tong Ankong ran over with short legs and stretched out his little hand. Ankong, please stop hugging her. You are too weak to hold her. Don't drop my little sister. Tong Anchi reached out and rubbed Tong Ankong's head, and Tong Ankong pouted in dissatisfaction. Sister, little brother, I can't seem to hold you. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. Tong Anil originally wanted to hug Tongan, but after thinking about what Tong Anchi said, he lowered his head in disappointment, and several others laughed. Don't hold, Nien Bauer, walk alone, not a 3-year-old child. Tong Anian's serious words made the group of people laugh even more. You are indeed no longer a 3-year-old child, but you are only 4 years old. Is there any difference between a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old? End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 9, is it tasty? Can it be eaten? Chapter 9, is it delicious? Can it be eaten? Of course she knew the guys were laughing at her, but she didn't mind. Walking out of the house with short legs, he looked as if he was afraid that Mr. Tong would regret it. Several Zazai hurriedly followed him, but they were afraid of losing Tong Anian. At the foot of the mountain, there are many people digging wild vegetables, and no one dares to go deep into the mountain. But there was really nothing to dig at the foot of the mountain. Everyone's harvest was very little, and some could not even cover the bottom of the basket. When they saw the Tong Anchi brothers, apart from a few of them saying hello to them, most of them quickened their pace, for fear that Tong Anchi and the others would steal their things. Brother, there is nothing around here anymore, what should we do? Tong Anshin frowned and looked at his eldest brother. They had been here a few times but rarely came here. There were so many people and there was nothing. Tong Enian's brows raised slightly. This was already exposed, what else could there be? You can't eat dirt, right? 0. Is there a place to grow sweet potatoes near here? Back to the master, there are too many people coming and going nearby, the land is hard, and there is no place for planting. The master can go for a walk into the mountains. Big brother, hug. Tong Nian raised her hand and looked at Tong Anchi, who bent down and held her in his arms. She pointed in the direction of the mountain without saying anything. Tong Anchi knew what Tong Nian was thinking, but he hesitated. The mountains were too dangerous and he couldn't take Tong Nian on the adventure. "Brother, let's go." Tong Nian patted Tong Anchi on the shoulder and gave a serious order. Tong Anchi sighed and walked in the direction Tong Nian pointed with his younger brothers. He had no choice but to pamper his younger sister. Some children watched them walking into the mountains and wanted to follow them, but were stopped by people around them. "They don't want their lives, don't you want your lives too? If there is danger, will they care about you?" A 7 or 8-year-old dark and thin girl looked at Tong Nian's figure fiercely. As we walked deeper, there were more and more wild vegetables. As we walked, Tong Anshin and the others were digging, and they dug quite a lot of them. Tong Anchi held Tong Nian and looked around cautiously. If there was any danger, they had better leave as soon as possible. "Master, the soil is soft in the valley ahead, and the sweet potatoes have been planted." After they walked carefully for 2 or 3 miles, Ling reminded Tong Nian. Tong Nian struggled to get down from Tong Anchi's arms. She first looked at the wild vegetables that Tong Anshin and the others had dug. She didn't recognize many of them, and the only ones she knew were dandelions. Tong Nian was dangling in front, and Tong Anchi followed behind to protect her. Suddenly, Tong Nian stopped and looked at a plant in front of her. "Oh my God, this is a bit too much, right? What's wrong? Little sister?" "Brother, it's delicious." Tong Nian pointed at the sweet potatoes and smiled happily. "Delicious? Little sister? What is this? Isn't it also grass? Can it be delicious?" Tong Anshan walked over and looked at the plant he had never seen before in confusion. Tong Nian didn't say anything, but squatted down and started digging with her little hands. Tong Anchi hurriedly pulled her up. "Do you want to dig it out, little sister? You go sit aside and I'll dig it out. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version." "Okay." Tong Nian sat there and watched Tong Anchi squatting on the ground and digging the soil. In just a short while, Tong Anchi dug out a few sweet potatoes. The Zai Zai looked at the sweet potatoes and were a little confused. "What are they? Can it be eaten? Little sister, is this really edible?" Tong Anha scratched his head and was a little worried. They had never eaten these things. If they couldn't eat them, why would they dig them out? "Yeah, it's delicious." Tong Nian nodded firmly, picked up a small sickle in her backpack, wiped it on her sleeve, and was about to peel the sweet potatoes. End of chapter. Farmhouse Fubao has space. Chapter 10, So Shameless. Chapter 10, So Shameless. Tong Anchi was afraid that she would be injured, so he took the sickle from her hand, picked up a sweet potato, wiped it on his clothes, wiped off the soil on it, peeled the sweet potato and handed it to Tong Anchi. Tong Nian held the sweet potato and took a bite. She immediately narrowed her eyes. It tasted good and sweet. With these sweet potatoes, they should not worry about running out of food. However, their strength is too small. If they want to dig them all out, they will have to send out Mr. Tong and others. Moreover, you have to dig a cellar at home, otherwise, how can you preserve these sweet potatoes? Tong Nian took 2 bites before passing the remaining sweet potato to Tong Anchi. He took a doubtful bite, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Before he could say anything, he handed the sweet potato to his brothers behind him, lowered his head and continued digging. Several other people tasted it and dug it in silence. "Big brother. What's wrong? Little sister. Brother, you can't dig too much, or you'll be seen, gone." Tong Nian's serious words shocked Tong Anchi. Yes, how could he forget that there is a group of people at the foot of the mountain? If their baskets are full, doesn't it mean to tell them that there are good things on the mountain? But he couldn't bear to dig it back and stay here. "Big brother. Grandpa together. Yeah, don't dig so much. Let's take some back first and let Grandpa and the others taste it. We should explain this thing to Grandpa and the others clearly and see what they decide." Tong Anchi smiled and hurriedly told the children. They all nodded and stopped after digging out their hands. Turning around, he saw Tong Anian collecting the leaves they had thrown aside. "Sister, what do you want this for?" Tong Anil asked while helping to collect it together. "Kai Kai." She lowered her head and replied. Several people were slightly stunned and collected the scattered leaves. Tong Anchi put the sweet potatoes in several baskets and covered them with sweet potato leaves. Then he picked up Tong Anian and left with a group of younger brothers. "Brother Anchi, what did you dig up?" The dark and thin girl didn't know why, but she had been waiting at the foot of the mountain. When she saw Tong Anchi and the others coming back, she went up to greet them. "I didn't dig anything. There's nothing on the mountain. I just pulled some weeds and prepared to go back to feed the chickens." Tong Anchi didn't say anything, so Tong Anshin spoke coldly. "I also need to feed my chickens, but I didn't dig out any wild vegetables. You dug so many, can you give me some?" Tong Anian blinked in Tong Anchi's arms and looked at the little girl in front of her. She seemed to have forgotten something. "Tong Shan Xing, what are you dreaming about? If you want, just dig it yourself. We managed to dig some weeds to feed the chickens, and that's all we dug. If I share this with you, what should I do if my chickens don't have enough to eat and can't lay eggs? My little sister still needs those eggs to keep herself healthy." Tong Anha had a bad temper, and he had never liked the girl in front of him, so he naturally spoke rudely. Hearing what Tong Anha said, she did not leave. She stood there with tears in her eyes and looked at Tong Anchi. Tong Anchi looked at her and without saying a word, he hugged Tong Anian and left. Check out the 16:9 book bar and see the correct version. So shameless. Tong Anha didn't forget to complain as he walked past her, making her face turn dark and red. Tong An looked at Tong Anha with a smile on her face. Her second brother was a straight man. He spoke so directly. Will any girl really like him in the future? When they got home, Tong Anchi and the others immediately closed the door. Mr. Tong and the others looked at the actions of the brats in confusion. When Tong Anchi and the others took out the things from their backpacks, no one else responded, but Ning Qingqiu actually stood up excitedly. End of chapter.